Hello, my name is Landon Shirts, and I'm going to be leading the writing workshop with the two people you see next to me. Just to introduce myself, I'm a college graduate. I currently work as an academic tutor.
I'm Matthew McCann, and I'm going into senior year of high school. I play hockey and lacrosse, and
I'm Charlotte McCann. I'm going to 11th grade in high school, and I play tennis.
So before we get into the details of the writing workshop, we each wanted to share some reasons why we like to write. I like to write because you can kind of cultivate your own story. What I mean is that sometimes you hear two people talk about the same thing, but one person sounds really boring and the other person's really interesting. So I like to be on that interesting side.
I like to write because you can create your own story that's personal to you and that no one else can have.
I like to write because I like listening to stories, and then you can translate that into your own work.
The writing workshop is going to be broken down into 8 different weeks. Each week, we're going to talk about a different aspect of writing. Today, we're going to start with brainstorming. Essentially, this is the process where you plan how to do your entire essay. Next week, we're going to talk about the hook, the beginning of the essay, following week, the introduction, and so forth. For each of these, we're going to read you some example essays. We're going to talk about the aspects of these parts of writing, and we're going to share what we think makes a good story.
Now we're going to read two stories that set a good example of how to write for this writing workshop. So I'm going to read Zen Shorts by John J. Muth. "Michael, there's a bear outside," said Carl. "A what?" called Michael. "A bear. He's really big, and he's in the backyard." "What's he doing?" Michael asked. "He's sitting. He has an umbrella," said Carl. "An umbrella?" By the time the boys got outside, their sister Addie was already talking with him. "I'm sorry for arriving unannounced," said the bear. "The wind carried my umbrella all the way from my backyard to your backyard. I thought I would retrieve it before it became a nuisance." He spoke with a slight Panda accent. Michael introduced himself, then Addie introduced Carl because Carl was shy around bears he didn't know. And this is how Addie, Michael, and Carl met Stillwater. The next day, Addie went to have tea with Stillwater. "Hello," Addie said as she stepped inside. Come in," a faraway voice called. Then she heard the voice say, "Oh yes, come out, come out." Stillwater was in the backyard. He was in a tent. "This is a birthday present for my Uncle Rye," Stillwater said. "He always gives presents on his birthday to celebrate the day he was born. I like it so much that I'm not staying in my house right now." Stillwater invited Addie to sit with him. "You brought me some cake," said Stillwater. "That was very nice of you. Is it your birthday?" he asked. "No," said Addie. "It's not mine either," said Stillwater. "But let me give you a gift for my uncle's birthday. I will tell you a story." Uncle Rye and the Moon. Uncle Rye lived alone in a small house up in the hills. He didn't own many things. He lived a simple life. One evening he discovered he had a visitor. A robber had broken into the house and was rummaging through my uncle's few belongings. The robber didn't notice Uncle Rye, and when my uncle said hello, the robber was so startled he almost fell down. My uncle smiled at the robber and shook his hand. "Welcome, welcome. How nice of you to visit." The robber opened his mouth to speak, but he couldn't think of anything to say. Because Rye never lets anyone leave empty-handed, he looked around the tiny hut for a gift for the robber, but there was nothing to give. The robber began to back toward the door. He wanted to leave. At last Uncle Rye knew what to do. He took off his only robe, which was old and tattered. "Here," he said, "please take this." The robber thought my uncle was crazy. He took the robe, dashed out the door, and escaped into the night. My uncle sat and looked at the moon, its silvery light spilling over the mountains, making all things quietly beautiful. poor man," lamented my uncle. "All I had to give him was my tattered robe. If only I could have given him this wonderful moon." "Your uncle sounds nice," said Addie. "I don't think I could have given away my only robe." "I know how that is," said Stillwater, "but there's always the moon." "That was a good story," said Addie. "Thank you," said Stillwater. "And this is a good cake." "Thanks," said Addie. "I made it myself." The next day Michael went to see Stillwater. "Here I am," Stillwater called from the tree. "Can I come up?" asked Michael. "If you are careful," said Stillwater. "What if we could fly?" said Michael. "We could cast shadows on clouds," said Stillwater. "But what if we fell?" said Michael. "If we fell we might break something," said Stillwater. "That would be bad," said Michael. "Maybe," said Stillwater. "Maybe?" asked Michael. The farmer's luck. There was once an old farmer who had worked his crops for many years. One day his horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to visit. "Such bad luck," they said, sympathetically. "Maybe," the farmer replied. The next morning the horse returned bringing with it 2 other wild horses. "Such good luck," the neighbors exclaimed. "Maybe," replied the farmer. The following day his son tried to ride one of the untamed horses, was thrown off and broke his leg. Again the neighbors came to offer their sympathy on his misfortune. "Such bad luck," they said. "Maybe," answered the farmer. The day after that, military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army to fight in a war. Seeing that the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. "Such good luck," cried the neighbors. "Maybe," said the farmer. "I get it," said Michael. "Maybe good luck and bad luck are all mixed up. You never know what will happen next." "Yes," Stillwater agreed. "You never know." The day after that, Carl went to visit Stillwater. Michael said I could bring over stuff to go swimming. I met him, Michael. He's always telling me what to do, so I brought everything. Said Stillwater. "It's a little pool. I don't know if all those things will fit." "Let's see," said Carl. "Let's see," said Stillwater. Stillwater looked at the pool. "The things can go swimming, but we can't," he said. "I brought too much stuff," said Carl. "That's okay," said Stillwater. "I'll help you carry it home later." "Why does Michael always have to tell me what to do?" Carl said. "If he were here I would climb up really high, and I would jump on him like this, and I'd do a big smash like this." Later, Carl and Stillwater had tea. "Carl," said Stillwater, "you spent the whole day being angry with Michael. Did you notice how much fun we had?" Carl watched the steam rise from his cup. "I'm sorry I brought all this stuff," Carl said. "You don't need to be sorry," said Stillwater. "Right now you need to hold on tight and I will tell you a story." A heavy load. 2 traveling monks reached a town where there was a young woman waiting to step out of her sedan chair. The rains had made deep puddles and she couldn't step across without spoiling her silken robes. She stood there looking very cross and impatient. She was scolding her attendants. They had nowhere to place the packages they held for her, so they couldn't help her across the puddle. The younger monk noticed the woman, said nothing, and walked by. The older monk quickly picked her up and put her on his back, transported her across the water, and put her down on the other side. She didn't thank the older monk, she just shoved him out of the way and departed. As they continued on their way, the young monk was brooding and preoccupied. After several hours, unable to hold his silence, he spoke out. "That woman back there was very selfish and rude, but you picked her up on your back and carried her out. Then she didn't even thank you." "I set the woman down hours ago," the older monk replied. "Why are you still carrying her?" "Do you think you have carried it long enough?" asked Stillwater. "Yes," said Carl. "Good," said Stillwater. And this is how Addie, Michael, Carl, and Stillwater became friends. 10 Shorts, the story we just read, is a collection of 3 short stories all wrapped up into one story. And the 3 different short stories involved the three different siblings in the panda. This story is good because it is interesting and unique because it involves a panda, which is not a human, and also it teaches a lesson in each of the stories. So the first story is about the robber and the panda's uncle, and how the panda's uncle feels sorry that he could only give the robber a robe when he could have given him the moon, which he finds way more valuable, and how the robber thinks the panda's uncle is insane for giving him something when he was caught robbing his house. The second story is about the farmer and his son, and the luck that they have, and how one thing might seem to be bad luck, but it actually is good luck. Like when the farmer's son breaks his leg on the horse, but the next day the army comes in to recruit members to go to war, and they pass him over because he has a broken leg. So that first appeared as bad luck, but it ended up being good luck for the farmer's son. And the third story is about the monks and the empress who the monks carry over the water, and she doesn't thank. And one of the younger monks is thinking about that and how rude she was. And the monk who carried her says, "Why are you still worrying about that?" And that's kind of a lesson on how don't put so much energy into things that you can't control. So, what you can learn about writing from these short stories is that you can be creative, such as using a panda instead of a human. And also, you don't have to just write a story about nothing. Sometimes you can write a story about lessons, and you can shape that into an interesting, unique way instead of just flat out saying what you're trying to get across. You can kind of hide it in a story, like this author did with the panda and the children.
Now I'm going to read A Sick Day for Amos McGee, written by Philip C. Steed and illustrated by Aaron E. Steed. He would wind his watch and set a pot of water to boil, saying to the sugar bowl, "A spoonful for my oatmeal, please, and 2 for my teacup." Belly full and ready for the workday, he'd amble out the door. Every day, Amos waited for the number 5 bus. "Next stop, City Zoo," the bus driver would call. 6 a.m., right on time, he'd reply. Amos had a lot to do at the zoo, but he always made time to visit his good friends. He would play chess with the elephant, who thought and thought before making a move, run races with the tortoise, who never ever lost, sit quietly with the penguin, who was very shy, lend a handkerchief to the rhinoceros, who always had a runny nose, and, at sunset, read stories to the owl, who was afraid of the dark. One day, Amos awoke with the sniffles, and the sneezes, and the chills. He swung his achy legs out of bed, curled them back again, and said, "Ugh, I don't think I'll be going to work today." Meanwhile, at the zoo, the animals waited for their friend. The elephant arranged his pawns and polished his castles. The tortoise stretched his legs and limbered up. The penguin sat patiently all by himself. The rhinoceros, worried about his allergies, were worsening. The owl perched atop a tall stack of storybooks, scratching his head with concern. "Where's Amos?" the animals wondered. Later that day. "Hooray, my good friends are here." The elephant prepared a game of chess. Amos thought and thought before making a move. "I'm too tired to run races today," said Amos to the tortoise. "Let's play hide and seek instead." The tortoise hid inside his shell. Amos hid beneath the covers. Amos yawned. "I could use a nap." The penguin sat quietly, keeping Amos's feet warm. Achoo! Amos awoke with a sneeze. The rhinoceros was ready with a handkerchief. "I'm beginning to feel much better, thank you," said Amos to his friends. He swung his legs out of bed. "Perhaps we'll share a pot of tea." Amos wound his alarm clock. "It's getting late," he said. "After all, we have a morning bus to catch." So Amos said goodnight to the elephant, and goodnight to the tortoise, and goodnight to the penguin, and goodnight to the rhinoceros, and goodnight to the owl, who, knowing that Amos was afraid of the dark, read his story aloud before turning out the light. The end. So we just finished reading A Sick Day for Amos McGee, and so let's just talk about it a little bit. So what was this book about? Amos McGee went to the zoo where he worked, but he had a lot of friends there who were all animals. He played a lot of games with the animals, different games with all the different animals. But one day, Amos McGee got sick and he couldn't go to work. The friends were really worried about him, and they were sad that he didn't come. So the animals decided to go to his house, and they played a bunch of games there. They comforted him, and the next day Amos was ready for work again. Why was this a good story? To me, it shows a unique friendship, an interesting friendship between animals and a human, which we don't really see in books often. Usually it's between different humans, or maybe it's between different animals. What lessons did this book teach? So for me, the moral was about friendship. Friends are there for each other even if something is in the way. So in this story, usually what the animals and Amos did was go to the zoo and hang out with each other there. But Amos couldn't go to the zoo because he was sick, so the animals had to do something about that and go to his house instead. So why did we read this book, and what can we learn about it for the writing workshop that we're going to do? This is a good example of what we were trying to accomplish at the writing workshop. So this story is what we want you guys to do when you guys write. The plot was interesting. There was a good hook. There were interesting characters between Amos and the animals. And the readers want to keep reading because it draws you in about what's going to happen with the animals and what's going to happen with Amos.
You've just heard two good stories, Zen Shorts, read by Matthew, and A Sick Day for Amos Lee, read by Charlotte. What makes a story good? Why were these two stories good? Overall, the stories revolve around characters. This is really the most important part of the story. You need characters. They need to undergo some sort of conflict. You need to introduce different parts of that, how the characters interact, each character's mindset and personality. First thing you need are characters. The characters interact to form the plot. Second thing is that plot. Specifically, you need to have a central conflict and plan how it's going to resolve. Something needs to happen, something changes as a result of that. Whether it's the character winning the lottery, or maybe someone finishes cooking their favorite meal, or maybe someone slips on the ice. You need a before and after for that plot. Overall, you want your story to have meaning. You want to write with a purpose, and not just write for the sake of getting words on a piece of paper. That meaning could be teaching someone a lesson. Specifically, you can include a moral in your story, like in those other two stories. Zen Shorts was really a collection of 3 tiny tales that each taught a moral lesson. You can do something like that with your writing. The most important overall takeaway from this is to make your writing interesting and to make it memorable. You want people
to like what you're writing and to want to read.
Now we are going to begin the writing workshop. So as you see, the essay topics are on the screen right now. So what we're going to be doing is going through all of them, and then you guys are going to be able to pick what you want to write about. So these are just like ideas, and you can craft this into any essay you want to go, and any idea you want to go with. Just have to start with one of these. You can pick something you want to write about, and you can be creative about it. Anything that you feel interests you and you want to talk about in your essay. So the first one is my favorite relative. This could be any relative you have. It could be your mother, your father, your grandfather, and you can write about what you do with them, what about them that makes them so special to you, anything about that. So the second one is an embarrassing moment that you have. It could be anything like falling down the stairs, or just something with your friends, out with your family. It could be anything. The third one is, what would I like to be when I grow up? So this could be anything that you, like your goals, what are your dreams, what do you do now that you want to keep doing when you grow up? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be like a nurse? Do you want to be a scientist? So the fourth one is how to make my favorite meal. This could be anything that you like, your favorite food that you make. It could be savory, it could be sweet, it could be with any family member. It could be something that you're copying, that you have, that you go out in, when you go out in public and you eat there. Anything that you really look forward to eating. And the fifth one is write a story beginning with the line, "I screamed, look out, but." This could be something that you actually personally experienced, that happened to you. It could be something that you saw, like someone who was you told someone, "Oh, look out, don't go in front of the street, there's a car." It could be anything with that. So now that you have those five, I could read them all. So the first one is my favorite relative. The second one is an embarrassing moment. The third is what I would like to be when I grow up. The fourth is how to make my favorite meal. And the fifth is write a story beginning with "I screamed, look out, but." So now you guys are going to spend the next 5 minutes looking at these and rereading them, and then picking an essay topic from this list that you are really interested in.
Now that everyone has a good idea about which of the 5 topics he or she wants to write about, I'm going to have you guys pair up in groups, take another 5 minutes, and try to convince the other person to change his or her topic. At the end of this period, you can either choose to keep or to change your topic.
So now we're going to be brainstorming. And what is brainstorming? Brainstorming is basically like the preparation before you start writing, and making sure that you have everything written down, your plot, the characters, setting, all the events, or a possible lesson that you want people to take away. And you do this all before you start writing, so that you don't have to think of it on the spot while you're writing. How does brainstorming fit into the writing process? Brainstorming is kind of the first part of the writing process. You can't really just start writing unless you know what you're going to write about, who's going to be in the story, and what the point of the story is. And this just makes it a lot easier. So how do you brainstorm? You're going to first pick a topic, and then, first you're going to write down a list of possible topics, and you're going to write everything down for those topics, you're going to write down the characters, setting, and what happened, and then you're going to pick the best one, and that's the one that you pick, and then you expand further on that, you write more on that, and then you're going to list down the things that you want to include, story, setting, events, and then you're finally going to write down the point of your story, whether it's a lesson, a funny moment, if you pick my favorite relative, who your favorite relative is, why they're your favorite relative, maybe a story as to why they're your favorite relative, and yeah, and that. So now you guys are going to spend 15 minutes brainstorming.
Congratulations! You guys finished day 1 of the writing workshop. Today we heard some good example stories, we picked the topic we're going to write about, and we started brainstorming for our entire essay. Next week we're going to be talking about the hook, the first sentence in the entire essay. See you then.